Feminist encounters in the wild. I am your bushy-haired, wild-eyed, mad genius poet, Moira Algier. I don't think I have ever met a single feminist who was not, if the topics of feminism and or gender got raised, a complete and utter asshole. That is to say, they act all nice and fluffy and what have you, until these topics come up. And the topics will always come up, because these ideologically blinded harbingers of nonsense and of dread and gloom and doom cannot shut up about it for more than 3 seconds. I suspect this is because they have no personality to speak of, no strength and no core, no essence, so they have to lean on their ideology to prove to themselves and the world in general that they are a good and decent person. This despite their ideology being hateful, toxic trash. Now, I suppose this sounds absurdly cynical and misanthropic, considering my stance that everyone has become a feminist by default through indoctrination and a generation of brainwashing. It sounds, I should think, as though I just hate everyone, which I honestly don't. I leave the hatred to feminism. What I mean is feminist activists, though everyone and their mums rush in to defend feminism should one mutter a single syllable in opposition to the holy bingo wings of feminism. You know the ones I speak of, the pins and buttoned up youngish political activists wearing their virtue on their sleeves and storing their honor in the ideology that tells them they are weak, hopeless and useless. It is easier, of course, to blame some external force, namely the patriarchy, for one's own shortcomings, than it is to work on oneself. And this is what feminism allows. A finger pointing ever outwards, pointing to some other force than oneself. Women are perfect just the way they are, no matter how they are. Society needs to change and conform to one individual woman's preferences, whose preferences by virtue of her and her alone are the preferences of all other women, despite what other women may or may not say in regards to this. The personal has to become political, as long as the personal perspective is that of a woman. Men need not apply, nor do women who are non-feminist, of course. So when I, a horrible patriarchal oppressor, this time in the guise of a white, straight, cisgendered heteronormative male with thin privilege, a bombshell trophy wife and a glorious fucking full beard as a gender signifier of no small importance, tell of my personal encounters with either horrible women or horrible feminists, which are, admittedly, usually the same thing, this is waved away as anecdotal and of no value. She does not represent all women, you moron. I never said she did. I do believe they represent most of feminism, however. Also, do you represent all women? Or when I mention, as I do time and again, the impact education has on young men when they are told that they are the root cause of all the evils in the world, this is again waved away as anecdotal, with all the buts and ifs and whats and hows in the world. Or of course, I am blamed for a woman's actions by virtue of me being male and her being a woman, which of course means that I hold power over her through some perversion or other of what power dynamics mean. Women can never be at fault. Somehow, one must find a way to blame a man. Feminism have no qualms in using personal anecdotes to push their agenda, but cannot stand others using anecdotes to explain their stance or reasoning, or just to tell a story. One single man doing something to a feminist represents all men. One single feminist doing something to a man does not represent feminism. Despite feminism being a self-imposed label, an ideology with beliefs and ideas and an intellectual structure to follow and adhere to, and men being, well, a sex and not a self-imposed label. It does not take a genius to figure this out. One does not choose to be a man. Despite what feminism claims, masculinity, maleness, being a man is not an ideology. It is a biological state of being, driven, as is my understanding of it, more by biology than by society, even if the two intertwine and one feed into the other. I think it would be wise to consider the two, socialization and biology, as not being separated from each other. I would dare say that societal norms impact us. Of course they do. We do not exist in a vacuum. But there is the thing of it. Society did not get created in a vacuum either, and I would think it absurd to claim that society was not built around behavior, norms and so and such that was already there, lying prone in our biology and in our instinctual behavior, the differences in male and female behavior dictating the course of our societies. Obvious to anyone but those whose minds and eyes are clouded by ideology, I suppose. One chooses to wear the label of feminist and to wave the virtue high and mighty for a wanted lack of personal agency. Thusly, one would not be amiss to consider that one feminist represents feminism, considering that it is an ideology one chooses to adhere to. Does one Nazi represent Nazism as an ideology? Does one communist represent communism as an ideology? Would one do wrong in attributing certain core ethics, values and behaviors to one Nazi or one communist, considering they are followers of one ideology or other? In particular, since both, or I should say all three, throwing feminism into the mix, are highly collectivized ideologies, viewing people not as individuals but as groups based, more often than not, on arbitrary characteristics completely irrelevant to anything and anyone but the completely superficial. So, if I get this right, the feminist mind says, one man's behavior is bad. This represents all men. One Nazi's behavior is bad. This represents all Nazis. One woman's behavior is bad. This does not represent all women. One feminist's behavior is bad. This does not represent feminism. One can rely on anecdotes to justify their stance. One cannot even use anecdotes to explain their stance. Considering all the video evidence available of feminist groups behaving like a gaggle of cunts, or feminist individuals acting like solitary cunts, I think there is a pattern of behavior evident to even the blindest of blind in a land of blind people inside a sack at the bottom of the sea. At some point, when facing down an ideology, the pattern of behavior is so recognizable as to no longer be anecdotal but just the state of things as is. So when people say feminism, they see Big Red screaming, "I'm talking fuckface," in the face of a very tolerant and patient man with a fantastic beard in their mind's eye. And the man is supposed to be the toxic one. This is the pattern of behavior from feminism, be they in groups or as individuals. Acting like complete and utter assholes and expecting no consequence for their cuntish and brutish behavior, all the while claiming that A, it is men that act that way, and B, it is the fault of men that the feminists in question act that way, or, my favorite, C, that this is not real feminism. Because real feminism is only about equality, even when self-identifying feminist women act as though it very clearly is not. Fuckface. Considering the lack of real feminists out there, I have come to the conclusion that there exists no real feminists. How could there exist real feminists when the actions, thoughts, words and deeds of every feminist encountered in the wild does not represent real feminism? What the fuck does any of this abject nonsense mean then? If there is no such thing as real feminism, why would one label oneself as such? Why, in the name of all that are cerebrally constipated, is this ideology so deserving of praise, of protection from criticism, and of unthinking, unblinking, unquestioning, blind and stupid loyalty? Actions speak louder than words, and the actions of feminism prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it is not now, nor has it ever been, about equality between the sexes. It is not now, nor has it ever been, nuanced enough to deliver on their peculiar promise of complete and utter equality between the sexes. It is a foghorn wailing longingly and lonely into the foggy, starless night, a reflective pyramid scheme painted lovingly in gold by con artists, miraculous in their trickery and genius in their deception. It should be no wonder to anyone that feminism and feminist women have the reputation that they have. They do have a tendency to barge in at anyone, anywhere, uninvited and unannounced, canker-sore mouths screaming and spreading spittle and herpes at everyone within their immediate vicinity when encountering even the slightest critique, or witnessing behavior that they, all alone on their lonesome, have decided is discriminatory against women, whether or not it is. Often attacking individuals completely unaware that they are doing anything other than being themselves and doing what they want to fucking do. Whether that be a woman enjoying cooking dinner for her man, or a man saying that his woman is beautiful. Attempting to shame and blame them into submission through a severe onslaught of ad hominem attacks and irrational and highly emotional reasoning, leaving no room to contemplate and no room to argue back. A feminist, faced with facts contrary to her opinion and emotion, resorts to nothing but shaming, attempting to get the usually male she is shaming to defend himself against accusations of this or that, instead of arguing the point at hand. Because she has no intellectual honesty, nor does she have any foot to stand on when faced with facts. And so the easiest thing to do is to claim someone hates women and only wish to oppress them further, to get him to defend himself against her assault on his character instead of defending his points, his facts, and his opinions. And instead of her defending her points and opinions. You see this time and again, every single time a feminist is faced with facts which she does not like or opinions which she does not like. It is easier to claim victimhood and foul misogyny than argue the points as they are. More and more are seeing through this bullshit, however, and so their decades-long tactics are being proven inefficient, time and time again. Feminism is in a state of decay. It has grown pompous, arrogant, decadent, fat and bloated on its own fumes. I have 1,000 anecdotes, and then some, of personal encounters with feminist women in the wild, in the throes of hysterics. Yes, I chose the word hysterics to be provocative. Ain't that something, coming from someone who does not wish to be controversial? Oh well, diddle my hump, I am at the very least self-aware enough to know that, since I am attacking the ideology that is feminism, I am controversial whether I try to be or not. Because that is the level we are at, where one can be critical about anything, accepting feminism and accepting Islam. Because these two are untouchable, and are, for some strange and peculiar reason, above and beyond reproach, above and beyond critique, above and beyond anything but love, admiration, and complete and utter blind submission. One would almost be inclined to use the word totalitarian, but just almost. I don't want the police to come knocking at my door, hate speech papers at the ready, by stating an absolute. Only cits and feminists deal in absolutes, even when that statement in and of itself is an absolute. Suffice it to say, through my anecdotal experiences with feminism, that I am not in the slightest interested in discussion or debate with them. There is no debate of value to be had with a feminist, as they are completely blind to anything but themselves and their ingrained, narrow-minded view of the world, driven more often than not by some personal grievance some 30 years prior. They have nothing but personal attacks to add to the discussion, nothing but thinly veiled contempt and hatred for men for being men, and for women who love men for being women who love men. Add to this, of course, a blind and seething hatred for men and women in loving and functional relationships not built upon competition but upon cooperation. A blind and incurable hatred for the nuclear family, and a frenzied disgust at a gut level for anyone deviating even slightly from the bottomless pit of fear and loathing that is their abhorrent cult-like ideology. Every so often, I find quite a bit of cathartic release in letting some of my personal experiences with feminist men and women slip through the cracks of my fingers and onto my digital paper, sharing it in delightful, grim and gruesome detail. For fuck's sake, and come to think of it, even women who do not necessarily identify as feminists see no qualms in pulling the victim by virtue of woman card to silence a debate or an opponent whenever it suits her. Which is a fascinating display of female entitlement in and of itself. How dare you disagree with me? I am a woman, in case you did not notice. Yes, your banshee howl alerted me to that. Now please argue the point at hand. I don't care about your genitalia. I care about your arguments, or lack thereof. I find it so infuriatingly interesting to see the aforementioned vile behavior from feminist women, Behavior that would not be accepted but would be named and shamed for what it is, abhorrent and childish and violent behavior, be celebrated and applauded as something brave and something heroic, despite being nothing but childish temper tantrums and selfish egotistical demands for attention and special treatment for nothing but vagina. Likewise, I find it frighteningly fascinating to see how our societies cave and buckle and give in to all demands, however stupid, however asinine, however imbecilic. To see our societies celebrate, accept and tolerate this behavior as long as said behavior comes from women identifying as feminist, or from women at all by the hard work of feminism. Because feminism, we have been told and taught for decades, can do no wrong, and any opposition is proof of nothing but contempt, hatred and abuse of women. And you don't want to hate, harbor contempt for, or abuse women, do you? Because hating women is the worst you can do. Hating men, on the other hand, is pure displays of virtue on the path towards equality. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ramble as well as my other ramblings. Please consider sharing, liking, subscribing and all that jazz. That would help the message, such as it is, be manspread far and wide. Take a look at the links down below as well, if you please. Catch you next time.